Welcome to This Explainer. Before we even really get going, I want you to just take a deep breath. Because honestly, by the time we finish walking through the reality we're looking at today, the universe is going to feel a whole lot less safe than it did just a few seconds ago. We are literally stepping right into the abyss of quantum horror. Right now, in this exact moment, there is a version of you that is dead. And I'm not being metaphorical here. This isn't some edgy philosophical thought experiment. According to one of the absolutely most rigorously tested mathematical frameworks in all of modern physics, there is a branching reality where you made a slightly different choice today. Maybe you stepped off a curb at the wrong second and you never made it to wherever you're sitting right now. That version of you just ceased. And the truly terrifying part is that, by that exact same logic, a version of you is experiencing literally every possible death right now, simultaneously. Okay, let's dive into this, because I know exactly what you're thinking. You're thinking, this sounds like pure science fiction. But I promise you, this isn't the rambling of someone wearing a tinfoil hat in a basement. This sense of existential dread, it's completely rooted in mainstream graduate-level physics. We're talking about material that is actively taught at MIT. It's taught at Oxford. It's taught at Caltech. Physics doesn't forbid this reality from existing. Actually, some of the absolute smartest people to ever walk the earth believe physics practically demands it. This terrifying concept is known as the many worlds interpretation. It was first proposed back in 1957 by a Princeton physicist named Hugh Everett III. Everett was a serious, highly decorated scientist who looked deeply into the mathematics of quantum mechanics and reached a conclusion that was so profoundly disturbing it basically ruined his life. His colleagues flat out couldn't accept it. His advisor, the legendary Niels Bohr, practically dismissed him completely. So Everett ended up leaving physics altogether, fell into alcoholism, and sadly died at just 51 years old. He never even got to see the mainstream acceptance that his ideas actually hold today. So, to really understand the horror that Everett uncovered, we first need to grapple with what sounds like a pretty sterile clinical concept in physics. It's called superposition. Basically, it means that before you observe a particle, like an electron, it doesn't actually have a fixed position. It exists in multiple states all at once. It's simultaneously spinning up and down, it's here and it's there. But the moment you measure or observe it, boom, it snaps into one definite state. Physicists call this the collapse of the wave function. And for decades, they just accepted this math without asking the deeply uncomfortable, completely paradigm-shattering question that Everett finally dared to ask.
And that question is this: why does observation collapse anything? Seriously, what is so incredibly special about a conscious observer that the fundamental fabric of reality would snap to attention just for them?
Well, Everett's answer to this was simple, and honestly, entirely annihilating. Nothing collapses, ever. The wave function never collapses. Instead, every single possible outcome happens. Reality branches. When a radioactive atom either decays or doesn't decay, reality actually splits into one version where it did and another completely separate reality where it didn't. And since these kinds of events happen at the subatomic level literally billions of times per second in every single cubic centimeter of the universe, this branching isn't just an occasional thing, it's constant. It is infinite. Which means you are not one person living one single life in one universe. You are a branching tree. Every decision you've ever made, every tiny quantum fluctuation in the atoms of your body has generated an entirely new version of reality. And here is exactly where the horror bleeds straight through the physics. Because if every outcome happens, then somewhere out there, a very real version of you is currently living through your absolute worst nightmare. Somewhere, a version of you made that one choice that destroyed everything. And that version, they are just as real, just as self-aware, and just as desperate as you are right now. Section 2. Quantum Suicide. The airtight, deeply disturbing thought experiment of the 1980s. This concept was developed in the 1980s and 90s by physicists Max Tegmark and Hans Moravec, and it asks a much darker question. If all outcomes happen, what happens to your consciousness? Now, I want to warn you to sit carefully with this next part, okay? The logic is mathematically airtight, but the conclusion feels viscerally, fundamentally wrong. I want you to imagine a machine pointed at your head. It contains a quantum random trigger, a radioactive atom. Step 2, if the atom decays in the next second, the machine fires. Step 3, if it doesn't decay, nothing happens. It's pure 50-50 quantum randomness. There's absolutely no way to predict it, no way to rig it. Now imagine you activate it once, twice, 10 times, 100 times.
If I were standing on the outside, watching you activate this machine 20 times, my odds of seeing you survive are 1 in a million. Statistically speaking, to an outside observer, your odds of survival are functionally zero. We would almost certainly just watch you die.
But now let's flip the script to the subjective perspective. Look at what happens from the inside. In the realities where the machine fires, there's no living brain, there's no consciousness. There is simply no you left to actually experience the death. Therefore, the only branches in which you have any experience at all are the surviving branches, the ones where the machine miraculously didn't fire. Which means, from the inside, from your own first-person perspective, against utterly impossible mathematical odds, you pull through every single time, because the dead do not get to experience being dead.
I want to let this terrifying realization sink in for a second, because this logic, it might apply to your entire life. You have been in lethal danger more times than you even know. A quantum fluctuation in a car's braking system, a misfiring synapse, a rogue cell. In the branches where it went wrong, there's no you. There's only grief for the people you left behind. But from the inside, you are always in the branch where you survived. Not because you're lucky. You're not a survivor. You are a filter. Your consciousness can literally only ever exist in the branches that continue.
Section 3. Echoes from other branches. What bleeds through the membrane of reality?
So, mainstream physics tells us that these parallel branches mathematically isolate from each other. They decohere. Supposedly, there is no known mechanism for them to ever interact. But no known mechanism has an incredibly humbling history in the world of physics. Back in 1900, there was no known mechanism for an atom having a nucleus. In 1930, there was no known mechanism for the universe expanding. Let's be honest, an absence of evidence has a pretty poor track record. And serious physicists note that if this quantum decoherence isn't perfectly complete, if there's even a tiny bit of residual interference between branches, well then something bleeds through. A sort of statistical ghost haunting our outcome.
Which brings us right to the weird phenomenon of déjà vu. The comforting medical explanation you'll hear from neuroscience is that it's just a brain glitch, filing the present moment as a memory by mistake. But then you look at the quantum decoherence theory. Yes, it's a fringe, highly speculative idea, but it is mathematically possible that déjà vu is exactly what it feels like, a faint signal crossing over. A brief moment where the membrane between adjacent branches becomes anomalously thin, and a version of events that already played out somewhere else is actually bleeding right into your reality.
So ask yourself this question. What if the dreams that wake you up in a cold sweat at 3 a.m., the ones that leave that lingering residue of dread you end up carrying around all day, what if they aren't generated by your subconscious? What if they are actually signals? A tiny vibration in the structure of probability, picked up by your sleeping, highly receptive brain. That awful feeling that something terrible happened. Maybe you feel it because somewhere, in an adjacent branch where everything actually went wrong for you, it really did.
Now, I am not telling you that this is definitively true. The absolute horror here, the real terrifying part, lies in the simple fact that nobody can tell you it is false. The physics simply does not forbid it.
Section 4. The final frame. The branch with no more splits.
If everything that can happen does happen in the many worlds interpretation, then somewhere out there, a version of you is consuming this very explainer for the absolute last time. I want you to really think about that parallel version of you. They're doing exactly what you are doing right now. They're listening to these exact same words, they're feeling that same low hum of existential unease, and they are completely unaware that they're about to experience the last frame before the cut to black. The exact point beyond which there is no more experience or left to split.
Quantum mechanics doesn't just open the door to parallel horrors, it essentially demands them. The terrors are already there. They are in every branch, in every direction, right now. You are only safe in this exact moment because the wave function held.
But you have to wonder, what happens when you reach the branch where it doesn't?